While the Grimm from the Harry Potter books is the best known, there are a lot of spectral black dogs in folklore, and we're going to talk about a few of those today. But we'll start with the one known as the Grimm, for reasons I'll get to later. Besides a black dog, it can also appear as an owl. Since it's a creature of the Fae, its ability to change forms should not be a surprise. Whether it manifests as an owl or a monstrous black dog, the Grimm will appear beneath the window of the person soon to leave the world and make hellish screeches or howls depending on its form to help speed the person on their way. Very much akin to the Irish banshee, though as with the banshee, it doesn't harm anyone. It merely disturbs their peace as they wait for the inevitable. As I said, there's no indication that the Grimm itself is the cause of the passing. The most the Grimm can be accused of is being incredibly inconsiderate. Frankly, I rank it one of the least interesting of the Grimms and black dogs we'll be discussing. You might agree after hearing about the others. Unless, of course, it's howling under your window or my window. That would be a different matter. The folklore of this creature extends from Britain through Scandinavia and into Finland. In Denmark, it's known as the Kirkegrim. In Sweden, the Kirkogrim. Same name, different languages. In Finland, the concept is called the Kirkonolaki, but that simply means church folk, and is a euphemism for all guardian spirits who play a similar role. While Scotland doesn't appear to have something called a church grim specifically, there is a tradition of the Galloway ghost, which appears as a large spectral dog and guards churchyards, illustrating just how widely distributed the tradition really is. The idea appears to come from a folk belief that whoever is the first to be buried in a new churchyard would be tasked with guarding that churchyard from all evil spirits until doomsday. Since no parishioner wanted that job, it became the custom to sacrifice an animal for the purpose. Sometimes the sacrifice would be buried under the cornerstone of the church, but quite often buried in the north end of the churchyard itself. As you could guess, there was no rule that the animal had to be a dog, and so there were reported instances of a church sow, a church cow, and a church lamb. I'll admit the idea of a ghostly lamb fending off the forces of evil has a certain appeal. Still, most of the time the job went to a dog, and so the church Grimm was born. Guarding the church and grounds from evil spirits and those intent on mischief was only part of the church Grimm's duties. Like their cousin, the regular Grimm, the church Grimm was also required to be a death omen. Unlike that cousin, the church Grimm accomplished this by ringing the church bell, which was convenient because many traditions claimed the church Grimm resided in the bell tower, which would be a good vantage point to keep watch. Another legend was, during a funeral, the priest would look up at the bell tower. By the demeanor of the church Grimm there, he could tell then if the deceased was destined for heaven or hell. In the latter case, a few more prayers might be in order. Black Shuck is a demonic black dog from East Anglia, especially Suffolk and Norfolk. Its name is believed taken from the Anglo-Saxon word shuka, meaning a demon, or possibly just a local word that simply means shaggy. It is said to be about the size of a small donkey with a shaggy coat and glowing red eyes. It can be found on the road, in a town, or like the church Grimm, in a graveyard. What happens when you meet one depends entirely on where you are. In Suffolk, if you don't interact with it, you're fine. If you challenge it or confront it in any way, you're doomed. In Norfolk, the situation is simpler. If you meet it, you're either dead or going to get very, very sick. There's no option to leave it alone because it won't leave you alone. Bad as that is, there's one interpretation of the creature that's even worse. In this tradition, the Black Shuck is not a demonic dog, but literally the devil himself. This is probably best illustrated by what happened to St. Mary's Church in the town of Bungay in 1577. According to Abraham Fleming in his pamphlet A Strange and Terrible Wonder, the incident happened during a severe lightning storm. Black Shuck appeared out of the storm when it was at its worst. The huge black dog attacked and snapped the necks of two people as they knelt in prayer and caused the steeple to collapse into the church. After this havoc, it continued to the town of Blithburg and attacked the church and people there, causing 3 more casualties. There are burned claw marks on that church's door to this day that the locals claim were a result of the incident. Naturally, there are some who argue none of this actually happened, citing the period as being one of great unrest and religious tensions during the Protestant Reformation in England. Likely another faction attacked the churches, and the result was blamed on Black Shuck. Well, maybe. Too many witnesses at the time say otherwise, so I'm going to stick to the demonic dog on this one. The name Bargeist is believed to come from Old English meaning bear ghost or boar ghost, which is odd since the Bargeist, although believed to be a shapeshifter, usually appears as a monstrous black dog with huge eyes, dragging a chain behind it. It's most commonly found in the northern counties of England. Again, like most other monstrous black dogs, it is believed to be a death omen. Unlike the Banshee or the Grim, it announces a passing after the fact. When someone dies, only then does the Bargeist start howling, which spreads to every natural dog in the area until they're all howling. Few people, other than the deceased, will get much sleep that night. Aside from being a death omen, a Bargeist may be more benign, if equally annoying. William Hone gave an account of another man's experience with the Bargeist in his Everyday book, published around 1826. In this story, the man was working late, had dropped by a local establishment for a drink or two, and then headed for home. As he walked, he kept hearing a swish-swish sound and the clank of a chain, but he saw nothing. He thought he was imagining things, but as he walked, he kept hearing the same sound, sometimes closer, sometimes further away, but never absent. Using some liquid courage, he stopped to try and get a look at the thing, whatever it was. After a few tries, he succeeded. Once he saw the dark shape and got a glimpse of the chain, he didn't try to see it again, but went straight home. When he arrived, he found the Bargeist had beaten him there, and was lying on the threshold, blocking the door and looking at him. He told it to move. It did not. He told it again. No response. He kept telling it, louder and louder, until his wife heard the racket and pulled the door open, whereupon the Bargeist immediately ran away. While the man was relieved, he was also a bit annoyed when it was clear that the Bargeist was more afraid of his wife than it was of him. To me, that simply implies a very sensible creature. Now we come to the Gwilgi. This is a spectral black dog found in Wales. It has red eyes and a coat blacker than night. The name itself means dog of darkness, and they live up to that name. The Gwilgi haunts country lanes and lonely roads, always appearing at night. I use the term appearing loosely, as they're very hard to see except for their eyes. Like others of their ilk, they are also omens of death. They're just, shall I say, a bit more proactive on that subject. While it's not explicitly stated, it's clear that the Gwilgi are more closely related to legends like the Cún Annwn and the Wish Hounds. They are known to stalk lonely travelers, and anyone they catch is never seen again. If by chance the victims are carried off rather than simply devoured, it's not hard to imagine to where, since they are also referred to as devil dogs. One story relates how a farmer was chased home by the Gwilgi. He managed to get inside his house and bolt the door, but wasn't really saved. He never recovered from the shock for the rest of his life. While they have much in common with some of the other black dogs I've talked about here, in one important respect they're very different. Almost all of the other dogs in Grimm's are solitary and singular. Not the Gwilgi, they hunt in packs.